studying, so it's slowly been coming along. My main, and thanks for meeting with me today. I'm happy I get to speak with you. But my main question for you today is, is there a certain way of how I should be studying in terms of structure, in terms of how long I'm studying each section? What would you recommend?
Well, in terms of my general recommendations, they're all laid out for you in the day-by-day study plan section of the course, the foundational section, which is really meant to give you a brief overview of how to approach each section and each question type. And then immediately afterwards, drill several questions of that type out of the prep tests. Have you had a chance to look at that section?
Yes, I have. I just started working on the logic game section, and each section does take me quite a bit of time. And I noticed that when I do get a question wrong, it's because I forgot about a rule, even though I diagrammed it. So do you have any tips of best way to keep all of that information in your mind as you go through the questions?
Well, if it's written down on your diagram, the rule, then why do you think you might still be forgetting about it?
I feel a little bit overwhelmed with all the information coming in, and each section, each game is a whole set of new rules and information. So I think maybe I'm getting a bit lost in that. But I guess diagramming is really the best way to keep track of the rules. Yeah.
Diagramming is the best way for sure. And it's understandable that you might still forget a rule because the rules are arbitrary, they're seemingly random, and you're jumping from one game to another that each one contains these seemingly random things.
Mm-hmm.
Repetition and exposure is really the best way to build your short-term working memory. I can't say much more than that, except that if you can get good at quickly drawing hypothetical scenarios when the situation calls for it, then you'll be better able to remember the rules by the end of that game, because you will have drawn more hypotheticals where you execute those rules over the course of the game. And that could help.
And how long would you say, what is the line to draw in terms of how many inferences you should make on a game? Sometimes I feel like I'm taking too long to try to figure out what may go where in terms of ordering. Should I just, after diagramming the rules, just go into it? What do you think would be best?
It's really whenever you reach a natural stopping point, when you're working methodically and systematically, combining rules or filling out multiple main diagrams. If there are natural splitting or bifurcation points where you can see going down one road versus going down another road, and you fill out each of those different diagrams. But then if there's a point at which you can't see a natural separation point, you just leave off there.
Okay.
There's no hard and fast rule in terms of numbers.
Okay, thank you. And for logical reasoning questions, I was wondering, as I do review, for each answer choice, should I try to strengthen and weaken the answer choice just for extra practice, or should I really just focus on why I got a certain answer?
I would focus more on why you got a certain answer, and if the one that you chose was incorrect, what made it appealing initially, what ultimately makes it wrong, what made the right answer unappealing, and what it ultimately makes it correct. So you don't need to actually go through the process of strengthening or weakening each argument or each answer choice, but you'll see in the workshops section of the course where I demonstrate the Socratic review method live in class, you'll see how, as an exercise, I might engage in that kind of reframing of a question to help you get more out of your analysis of the argument and better understand things.
Okay, thank you. And I was just wondering, is there a best method for taking data on your progress. So, for example, I got parallel reasoning questions wrong this many times, and um, I know that's a lot of information to write down, and it seems very time consuming. So, I was wondering if that is necessary, or is there a shortened, abbreviated method of taking those kind of data?
It's a good question. I actually think that that kind of question stem analysis in terms of aggregating data is not that useful, in particular because not everything is about question stem type.
Mhm.
You might get a question wrong simply because it's a difficult stimulus, a difficult method of reasoning, or there's a certain unique trick that showed up in the answer choices. And so question stem focus won't reveal that. Those won't reveal that, right? Because it's not contained in the question stem in terms of what initially made it difficult for you. Sometimes things like parallels are typically harder on average for everybody. And so you might get a lot of them wrong, but because they don't show up that frequently, it's not necessarily worth focusing on relative to questions like flaw or necessary assumption, which show up far more often. And for those, you might get more of those wrong just because they show up more frequently.
Mm.
So I'd focus really on just understanding the stimulus, understanding the methods of reasoning, and then you'll get a sense of just organically which types you like and which types you don't like, and that'll reveal what you might want to focus more on.
Okay. And should I, going off of that a bit, should I be able to really at a snap moment identify, oh, it's this type of question, therefore I need to use this type of reasoning to solve it for each different category of stimulus? Is that important?
Good question. Yeah. So if you recognize the method of reasoning in a stimulus, that's amazing because that means that you won't have to interpret it as if it were your first time ever seeing that kind of reasoning. You'll have that sort of muscle memory where you can more quickly analyze it and then spot what might be the gap in the argument, and then what type of correct answer you're looking for. That can definitely help.
Okay. Okay. Um, and because I am new, the LSAT is like seems like a really big monster to tackle. But in terms of timeline, I know it's different for everyone, but normally or on average, how long would you say it takes someone to, get comfortable with it in terms of timing? Because right now I can't finish a complete section within the given time. Or how long does someone take to study for the LSAT entirely? I know it can take maybe years, but is that a year or so? Is that the average, you would say?
It's a great question. There are people who definitely take a year or more. I don't think it needs to take that long. I recommend minimum 3 months and ideally 5 to 6 months in order to achieve your fullest potential. And it's worth investing that amount of time in this because the LSAT is, of course, the biggest factor in the law school admissions process. So if it weighs more heavily than your entire undergrad GPA, you want to give it more than a few months considering its importance. So I would allow ideally 5 to 6 months from start to finish. Is there a certain date that you're looking at right now as a target?
Um, well, so I signed up for the January LSAT. I don't know why. I started studying in October, so it's a really, really tight timeline. But I figured, it'd be a good chance to take it just to see how I do and, how I do in a test taking situation. I did want to apply for this 2022 cycle, but I understand it's really difficult um, because, the whole thing where, September is better and all that. Scholarships are given out earlier. So I know it will be difficult, but I just wanted just to see. And I'm coming to realize that it's okay if it takes longer because it is a big component of getting into law school. Um, but yeah, if you have any thoughts on that part of the process, on whether or not it's too late to apply or, it's better to hold off, I just like your advice on that.
Yeah, of course. So I agree, January is a bit tight. It only gives us about a month between now and then. And if you want to achieve your fullest potential on the exam, I recommend allowing more time. So I'd suggest, if you could, pushing it back at least a few months and then applying at the beginning of the cycle in the fall to start law school the following year. Okay. You could try to squeeze it in by February, let's say, but that's a bit of a tight timeline.
Okay. And I like watching your channel, by the way. But on your channel, you talk a lot about scholarships, and I didn't do as much research as I should have, but I just got the impression that if you do well enough and you're a good fit for the school, they will offer you a scholarship. Is that true, or you have to actually apply to certain scholarships for each school?
That's a good question. And the scholarships that I'm typically referring to are merit-based, based on numbers. So if your LSAT and or your GPA are above the medians of the schools to which you're applying, typically then, along with the offer of acceptance, they will also offer you a scholarship as a discount on tuition. Mm-hmm. Law schools often do have scholarships for which you can specifically apply as well. Scholarships that have names associated and separate applications associated, but the ones I'm referring to don't require a separate formal application process.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, of course. I'm glad you like the channel, by the way.
Oh yeah, no, it's great. I'll listen to it before I go to bed just to get some information stuck in there. But yeah, I'm not sure how much time we have left.
Yeah, we've got time if there's anything else you wanted to cover, any other questions you have.
Okay, looking at your journey to the LSAT, do you have any, because it can be quite difficult and stressful to study for this test in the long term as well. Do you have any, little tidbits of inspiration, like, you can do this even though the journey's long, or like just advice, general advice for getting through this process?
Yeah, sure. Well, let me ask you this. So what other obligations do you have between now and whenever you might take the LSAT? Are you still in school? Are you working?
I am working 2 part-time jobs, finishing up a master's degree program. So I just have those on my plate right now, as well as studying for the LSAT.
Will that be true next year as well?
Yes.
Okay, then what comes to mind for me is that you can treat this like another part-time job. You don't need to feel like you've got to put in 4, 5, 6 hours every single day. Even just a couple hours a day will be enough to let you make forward progress. And also, hopefully, the idea that you don't need to take it in January or February, you could slow it down a little bit, knowing that you have several months to reach whatever your goals might be. And so just 2-3 hours a day at most over several months will get you significant results over time. Okay. And there's no rush on this, and you can achieve massive score increases. There are people I've seen in students in my courses who I've worked with who've improved 10, 20, even 30 points. So wherever you're scoring now does not reflect where you'll ultimately end up. And it's worth putting in the time.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Yeah, of course. Anything else? Any other questions?
No, I think you've answered everything that I had on my mind. Yeah, thank you.
Of course, Kylie, my pleasure. It was great to meet you. Let me know if you need anything at all moving forward. I'm happy to help.
Thank you. You have a good rest of your day.
Of course, you too. Take care. Thanks for tuning into the show. Please subscribe if you haven't done so already to be notified of new episodes as I release them. And feel free to reach out if you need anything at all as you move forward with your prep. I'm happy to help however I can. In the meantime, I'll wish you all the best and take care.